In a recent video, we discussed cancelled characters for Mortal Kombat, but today we're covering an entire game. That's right, this video is all about the cancelled Mortal Kombat game that never was. The gameplay, character designs, and setting was very different from past games. Or at least it was going to be, because, you know, cancelled. Which is a shame because many aspects of this game sound really cool. Plus, when you find out why it got cancelled, oh boy. Thankfully, some elements from this game survived and got transferred into future games. So that's one tiny silver lining, and without further ado, let's discuss the details of this cancelled game. The setting for this game was dark, like really dark, as in it was meant to be depressing and ditch the goofier elements of past Mortal Kombat games. The developers wanted this game's atmosphere to really draw you in, to immerse you in a brutal world that's uncaring and dark. In other words, nobody would be doing this. Instead, the game would be very serious and ditch the sillier elements of past games. People don't often realize how goofy the Mortal Kombat games are, despite all the violence. Characters do some very goofy things in this series, and it's on purpose. The developers don't want the violence to be overwhelming and put people off, so they include goofy stuff in the games too. It's a well-crafted balancing act that I think developers did well. It's intentionally goofy and violent at the same time. But this new game would be nothing like that. It would take itself seriously the entire time. And let me know how you feel about that in the comments below, because on the one hand, I like the idea of a dark Mortal Kombat game that does take itself seriously, but also I don't want the games afterwards to keep that same tone, if that makes sense. In other words, if I knew this game was a one-off idea, then I'm completely on board with it. But if the developers wanted every game afterwards to be like that too, then nah, I'm out. Because I like the goofy elements of Mortal Kombat games. I think it supports the fantasy of it all. In the same way that comic books can get really goofy, even if the overall story is dark and serious. There's still some silly stuff there because it's a comic book. Why not include that stuff when it fits the medium so well? I want my Mortal Kombat games to be that way too, because I think the goofy elements, when done subtly, supports the violence of the game and makes it feel not too serious, you know? Because I think the goofy elements support the series overall, but if just for one game it was really dark, edgy, and depressing, like the Berserk manga, that could be pretty dope. Just like the setting, the gameplay of this new Mortal Kombat would be very different too. The combat would be more grounded in reality, but still brutal. In other words, Scorpion would still punch, kick, and stab you, but no longer uppercut you 20 feet into the air. The fights in this game would feel more real, but keep the brutality, which kinda makes sense because it would help support the serious tone of the game. You can't keep the serious tone along with the over-the-top gameplay. The two kinda go against each other. You can't have a game that's super serious during the cutscenes, then suddenly players are getting punched through ceilings during gameplay. It would be like pairing peanut butter with mustard. These two things just don't go well together. The developers wanted to make sure the gameplay would fit the serious tone of this new Mortal Kombat, which is why the characters would fight less like superheroes. Once again, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, because honestly, I hate this idea, for the most part. Because I don't play video games for realism, or at least not the fighting games. I like how Scorpion does flaming backflip kicks that launch enemies into the stratosphere. That's how I think Mortal Kombat should be. If the characters can shoot fireballs and control ice, then why not have super strength too? Limiting what the fighters can do during gameplay feels really restrictive on paper, and I worry it would fail in practice. However, with all that said, if done properly, it could be amazing, especially with modern technology. I'm picturing it like the UFC games, only way more violent and bloody. The player would no longer be able to flip and jump around, but the punches and kicks would feel more brutal because the camera would be closer and show all the damage in real time. I think if done properly, this could work, but also it would likely upset a ton of players. Finally, we have the character designs. That's right, we actually get to see them, a few of them, because even though this game was cancelled, the artist still managed to finish several designs, which means we get to look at them today. Alright, here we go. Vincent Proce is the artist. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If not, I apologize. But here's his website. Let's go. My Mortal Kombat Redesigns. Here are the Mortal Kombat characters I redesigned for a Mortal Kombat pitch I made before I left Midway last year. The basis for the idea was a reimagining of the the Mortal Kombat franchise from the original premise. And look at that, we got Scorpion as the first image, Scorpion as a wraith wearing the yellow blood of the demon that helped him resurrect to exact his revenge against his mortal enemy. Yeah, as mentioned earlier, this game was dark, so Scorpion's tunic is not dyed yellow through natural means. Instead, it's literally the blood of a demon that helped resurrect him. How cool is that? And look at his skin too, it's gray to emphasize that Scorpion is literally a zombie. He's back from the dead, so his skin does not have that color that it would if he was, you know, a warm-blooded living person. Overall, I think this costume looks pretty good. It's on the simple side, but sometimes less is more, and I appreciate that. But then we have Raiden. This design is a bit out there, but I kinda dig it. Raiden as a god whose feet rarely touch the ground. Just look at the size of that hat, man, and the fabric is super loose too. On modern consoles, this could actually work. I don't think in 2009 this would have looked very good, but with modern consoles and technology, you could make this outfit work. And the idea that Raiden's feet never touch the ground is interesting. I wonder if in this timeline, Raiden doesn't really like humans that much. He sees them as lesser, which is why he refuses to even walk on the same ground as us. Next up is Sonya, the daughter of a Texas Ranger whose sex appeal weakens her opponents while her special forces training kicks their asses. The first thing everyone comments on with this costume is the lack of pants, and I agree it kind of feels goofy and doesn't fit well with that dark tone, but also Sonya Blade is literally the legs character, right? She's like the Chun-Li of Mortal Kombat. So showing lots of leg kind of makes sense, but maybe pantyhose or some fishnets would work better here. I'm not entirely sure, but overall I like this design. The tattoos are interesting. The spiky boxing glove she has is kind of goofy. That's the weirdest part to me. Not the missing pants, but that glove is weird. I think adding some camouflage paint to Sonya Blade, similar to Cammy in Street Fighter, would work really well here. Next up we have Kano, half Japanese, half US military badass. Yeah, so a lot of people tend to forget that Kano was half Japanese, half American in the very first Mortal Kombat game too. But then the 1995 movie happened and the Cockney accent made people think that Kano was Australian. That was never the case until after that film because everybody assumed he was Australian and the developers just kinda ran with it. But originally, Kano was half Japanese and half American. And just like with Sonya, I'm a big fan of the tattoos. I think it looks good. The random spikes kinda work here as well. The katana on the back is so sick, and I like the gritty cyber enhancements on his head too. It looks more visceral than past games. However, I'm a bit confused because I've seen Sub-Zero artwork for this game too. Was it by a different artist, or did he forget to put it on his website? I'm not sure, but here it is on screen. And according to Top Hat Gaming, Sub-Zero would work with the Frost Dragon faction in this game, instead of with the Lin Kuei, so that's a pretty big change. But if you look closely, then you'll notice this costume looks familiar, almost like you've played it in a recent game. Yeah, Mortal Kombat X. This costume looks very similar to the Mortal Kombat X design. Remember how earlier I mentioned that certain aspects of this canceled game survived into later titles? Yeah, Mortal Kombat X kept a lot of these elements, because the tone in that game is much darker. The story overall is way more serious, the colors are less saturated too. Overall, the game's design has way less color, it's a darker setting, period. Now, it's nowhere near how dark this canceled game was going to be, but it's still much darker than Mortal Kombat 9, and I'd argue even darker than Mortal Kombat 11 or any game after. Mortal Kombat X is the dark and edgy game in the series. So even though this game got cancelled, it's nice to know that some elements survived into future games. But why exactly did this game get cancelled? Earlier I promised to mention why that happened. So here we go. Put simply, the developers were in massive debt. They desperately needed money, and this new game was their Hail Mary. But then they got offered a bunch of money to make something different. It would still be a Mortal Kombat game, technically, and that game was none other than Mortal Kombat vs. DC. Yup, this game right here is what we got instead. But to be fair, this game is not nearly as bad as people pretend it is. Competitively, it was pretty fun to watch and had some stylish combos too. It's not the prettiest game to look at, and not having real fatalities was a bummer, but not really a deal breaker for me personally. Sadly, the company still shut down, but NetherRealm soon emerged and rebooted the entire series, which gave us course, Mortal Kombat 9, and that game is still celebrated to this day. Then we got Mortal Kombat X, which as mentioned earlier has many elements from this cancelled game. So there you have it everyone, everything I know about the cancelled Mortal Kombat game that never came to be. But if anybody watching knows any more facts, then please let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below, it helps my channel out a ton. And then finish that combo by subscribing and ringing that bell so you never miss any future videos. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.